Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience and retention is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about the times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you to follow us on Twitter at Customer Fanatics. That's customer and then Fanatix. And also just follow me on LinkedIn at Heather Younger. That is because I'm in the process of writing a book based upon this podcast, which will have amazing stories of those on the show. And I'm going to be going a little deeper too, so you will not want to miss it. But I'll be putting out tidbits, asking for feedback related to the book cover and just ideas and colors. I want you to be a part of that. I want you to lend your voice to that. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at customerfanatics.com, and you'll get a couple freebies as well, including the first chapter to my book and some emotional intelligence tips as well. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully you enjoy this show. Hi, everybody. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast, and I am really, really happy to have someone who I consider actually a longtime friend on the call, but someone who's just really professional. It's Dr. Jandell Allen Davis. And I have her on here. It's been quite a while since we've actually connected, but something just made me reach out to her. And from just a while ago when we were interacting, when she was in another hospital system or healthcare system, she just really hit me as someone who was an emotionally intelligent leader who cared about people, not just as far as from the health perspective, but just overall the emotional well-being of the people that she led and those around her. So that's why I have you on the call, Jandell.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
So again, thanks for the time and the opportunity to share some thoughts. With respect to where I am in my leadership journey, I'd say that I want to say that I'm at the end, but I don't think you ever really end. But in terms of the place that I find myself, surprisingly, after 24 and a half years at Kaiser Permanente, I'm now the president and CEO of Craig Hospital. That's a title. That's not where I am in my journey. What I'd say with respect to the journey is that I feel like all of these opportunities to be parts of teams, to lead teams, to create teams, to develop people as individuals, let alone as teams, has put me at this place where I'm in a place where I can, I think, leverage and exercise and use all this stuff that over many, many years I've had a chance to learn and to do, and to scrape knees and have some victories. So that's where I'd say I am. This is a marvelous place that I get to work in, and it's fun to be in a place, and very gratifying to be in a place where I can bring my whole self to work. So I think that's where I am in my leadership journey. I'm in a place of just sort of wholehearted expression of who I am in a way that I don't need to feel embarrassed or ashamed about.
Oh, that's beautiful. You know, I wonder, even in that, I bet you that because that you feel comfortable bringing your full self to the workplace, then it's easier for others to do the same, right? So then while you're all doing just meaningful work anyway, working at that particular specialty hospital, then you also feel like you're having that much more meaning because the leader of the organization is bringing them their full selves to the workplace too.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment. I think over all of our careers, we've had maybe the misfortune or the less than great fortune of working for leaders who don't necessarily do that. And what I've noticed is, I think it's through noticing what its impact was on me that I was able to think about then how do I want to show up. And the real buttoned up, closed leaders who aren't even, and warmth comes out in a lot of different ways, but aren't warm, don't feel accessible, they cause all of us around them to clam up too, that it creates a space of that is not psychologically safe. And frankly, in healthcare, not only is if you don't have psychological safety, are you not going to speak up, but actually the places become unsafe and they actually aren't healthy places. So yeah, you're spot on that one. People want to see us and they want to be seen by us. And so sort of being who you are, I think is really essential in terms of having healthy workplaces.
Well, that's beautiful. I mean, like you're speaking my language, you're making the hair stand up the back of my neck a little bit, because people who hear me and listen to this a lot know I'm just a little bit geekish on all this topic. So this idea of people want to see you and they want to be seen, that's just so fundamental. It's like leadership 101, but rarely exercised. In that first book that I did on the 7 intuitive laws of employee loyalty, I put in there this idea of deep connection to the mission and vision, values, connection to the leaders, the executive leaders, the managers, the coworkers. And when the leaders actually get it, when they understand that the power that they wield, not in a negative way, but in a positive way, to really change the experience for those inside those walls that they lead, right, in that workplace. When they realize that, that's where the brilliance starts to come on. It's like, oh my gosh, like I go down and I say hi to my people. I walk around and just say hi for no particular reason. Wow. Right? It's just crazy.
And that's certainly what I have the opportunity to do. I wish every day here, but then when I see folks in fact, today was one of those days I got to be out and about a bit more. And someone said, I haven't seen you for a while. And I'll go, yeah, they let me out. They let me out. And when I get to do that, it makes coming back into the office where, and actually, this is like any hospital, it has its stresses and its strains, or any workplace, I should say, but this is a place that runs really, really well. And yet there's something about going out and touching both our patients and our teams who care for our patients that makes coming into this office and doing whatever it is I have to do or whatever meeting I have to be in, it just doubles down on the commitment to the work. That, if it's a great place, my responsibility is to keep it a great place, if not make it better.
That's a good point you bring too. And I think that's maybe one of the things that leaders miss is when they're so there's connection from the ground up, and there is this idea of connection from up down. So there's this disconnect that often happens between the front line, the customers themselves front line, and the employees front line, and the executive leadership team. And so what I find myself doing often is kind of advising the teams to I know things get crazy busy, their schedules are nuts, but even scheduling it in and rotating between different executive leaders who get to, like you said, go out and connect with patients, connect with customers, connect with employees, so they can feel this deep meaning. And I think that's amazing that you hit that. I don't think I've done about 67 episodes. I don't think anyone's actually brought that connection back down. It's equally as important for you as the leader and as any executive leader to make sure that you have the connections backwards, so that then you feel more meaning in your work and you can continue to bring that energy into the space. Then it just continues to kind of trickle or filter into everybody else, right? Bring meaning for everybody.
Yeah, it does. It's I guess probably in a few words, what I would say is it deepens my why and it deepens purpose for me. It just sort of reinforces every time I get to say hello to new patients. In fact, I just went up and welcomed a new family because I got an email from someone who I know who let me know that we had a new patient in the hospital, and I went up, and just to be able to hug that patient's mother and let her know I was here, I feel like if I could do this every day, what I don't think our customers realize, because not all our workplaces are this healthy, is that we get more out of what we get to do in service to them than they get from us. And that's win-win. That's where it's really, that's the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. That right there is like a whole nother, webinar that you and I should do jointly, to be talking to leaders about the gifts they receive by re-engaging with the workforce and with the customer base. I do think that there's this idea of we're working on their behalf by doing all these things up here out in the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't realize how much that disconnect actually, I guess, goes to or creates the lack of meaning in the work for them and the people they lead. And so by you re-engaging every time, you're able to bring all your hearts in it, and then all the staff is seeing this. They're all watching you and how you interact. So now you're also training them how they should be with those that you serve and one another. I mean, that is just beautiful. Thank you for that perspective today. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've been leading for a really long time now. Where do you think your drive to lead comes from? Where did it all start? When did you first consider yourself a leader?
That's so funny. I don't know when I gave myself that title, but I can remember being no more than 4 or 5, and my mother remarking to some person, another adult, the mother of whatever kid was at our house, that she's so bossy. And so, it's funny. And yet you hear that and it's sad. It has this negative tone to it. But I sometimes think about that and think, gosh, so what was I channeling way back then? And it wasn't like, do this, do that. It wasn't this, although I can be that way too if I'm not careful, I suppose. But it's really that I have always wanted to be part of making systems better. And I can say that now. It's not how I would have said it in 8th grade when I think the day before or the day of, as I tell the story now of graduation, I asked from 8th grade, I asked Sister William Anita if I could do a graduation speech to the class. I think, who does that? I think that now I go, oh my God. Or, and I was elected to student council in high school, and I was the first woman to chair the Afro-American Society at Dartmouth where I started in '76, and was the chief resident of my residency program. And so it wasn't that I said I must lead, because that's not what it was about. But what I do say is I want to be included in opportunities and exposures and experiences that provide chances to make change and to make systems better. So, in terms of this whole notion of where do you think the drive comes from, it comes from that notion that we all have something to contribute, and we have to be willing to show up and speak up when we get there. So,
Love it. I love it. And I think we do get people that obviously, sometimes you get leaders stepping on each other because they're just trying to, speak up and show up kind of things, right? But what I like about just everything that you've already shared up to this point is you were prepared to step up, but in a way it really is focusing on serving others, like touching others, growing others. So it wasn't just for your own sake. Now, I'm not saying there's no ego involved, because like even for me, I do this work this whole day, every day, and there's absolutely ego. I feel really good when I see a client that goes from one spot on the top workplaces, thing to like way up. And I'm like, ooh, I had a hand in that. There's an ego involved in that. But at the same time, the work that's being done is exciting because it's for the other people. It's for people.
Yes. Yeah, I don't have, it's interesting. We talk about, it seems like these days maybe more so narcissistic leadership or narcissists in leadership positions. And, years ago, I learned that there is a healthy form of narcissism. I mean, it takes even if you forget leadership, I'm a physician. I practiced for 25 and a half years. And I remember reading once, what do you think it takes as people to actually take a scalpel, a knife, and cut somebody, which is what I did as part of my work. So there's a sense of healthy narcissism, which is the confidence that you've got the skills, but also it's a level of confidence that you also are self-aware enough to know when you need to learn something, when you need to lean on the wisdom of the teams, when you need to lean on the wisdom of the patients and their families, et cetera, to get things done. And that's the healthy part of leadership, or health, called healthy narcissism, actually. So yeah, there's ego in it, but the fun part, and I think as I've gotten older, I've learned to, despite what we're doing right now, speak less. And the fun thing about that opportunity to speak less is that I can see my little seeds, whatever those may have been, that I might have planted, start to take root. And they actually take root better than anything I ever could have come up with, because I may throw an idea out, and when they take root, or they take, take off, they're always better than anything I could have come up with. So, yeah.
That's the beauty. I think that's the beauty of it. I think the fact that you can just kind of throw out a seed and let it go and see where it goes is just, I bet you that's really liberating for those who are there, because I was talking to someone earlier. We talk about like different team members in their experience. Let's say they're younger, okay, and they come into the workplace and maybe it's their first job or only the second job, and so they're not as jaded as it relates to just the process, the people, the leaders that are there. And then you get those who may have been working for 15, 20 years, and they do come with a certain level of baggage with them that it reflects all of the years of working and sometimes working under great leaders inside of great organizations, and sometimes not. And so, but having a leader like you, I think either way is liberating and refreshing to have that person who just said, here's an idea, and it just lets the people run with it. Now, I'm sure it can't just go like completely uncharted or unchecked, but at the same time, just still having just much more freedom is just, be a great place to be.
Yeah, it's like if I have to sort of have whatever little bit of acknowledgement I need in terms of seeing where things go, I can do it at 2 a.m. and go, yay, you. So you started that, but do it, let the team, spotlight on everybody else, especially at this stage in my career. And I think that comes with confidence and with just doing the work long enough that, I don't know that there's anything called a pinnacle in a career. I mean, I hope we are always committed. I hope to always be committed to lifelong learning and new adventures and see where the day goes, but what new things might await me. But there does come this point, it should come a point in your life where you have lived enough, or as my husband said, had enough birthdays that you don't need that kind of public acknowledgement. And that's not to say that there wasn't a time in my life where I needed it and wanted it. And I think that was born out of just needing to kind of grow my own self-esteem, deal with the issues of growing up in a fairly dysfunctional home where there wasn't, frankly, a lot of love or a lot of attaboys or attagirls. And so I knew that there was approval-seeking kinds of behaviors, and I think all of us leaders can fall into that. But there comes this point where you get a sense enough of yourself, or at least say, this is it. This is as good as it's going to get, like me or not. And then once you can stop caring about those things, it's so much easier to just shine the light on others and let them, and actually allow them the space and the grace to grow by throwing stuff out and seeing how we might do these things together, but giving others the accountability and just trusting that you've got stuff in there to help them stay out of trouble.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's a great way to look at it. And, well, okay, question for you. How do you think the people that are there reporting to you, how do you think they would define or describe your leadership style?
Now, that's one of those questions that you get asked and you're never quite sure how to answer it. But what I would say is they know I'm accessible, for sure. Doors always open, but more important than doors always open, heart's always open. I think they'd say that I'm an inspiring kind of leader. I'm visionary. In fact, sometimes I have to say, all right, my extroversion is just coming out and I'm just throwing an idea out. It may be like the second or third or the 10th stupid thing I've said today. So you look at the signal as a leader when you're just thinking out loud as opposed to you want somebody to do something. But I'd say certainly visionary and inspiring. I'm kind. I know I'm a nice person. But I also can be a player coach, right? So I don't want you to hear all those words as, oh, she's the one who sits in the corner office and eats bonbons and thinks great. But I also love to be part of creating these systems. So these last two teams that I've led, the one I get to lead and serve now, as well as the folks the 170 people I was accountable for when I was at Kaiser Permanente these last 9 years. I said, guys, we're a team of equals. I'm pretty clear about what I bring or think I bring to this work. But I had government relations. I can't get a 30-year career or a 20-year career in health policy and in politics. I mean, I'm like an OBGYN, and for 25 of those years, I took care of women while doing other, obviously, leadership things. But you got to be able to trust the wisdom of the team. So it's also just fun to drop down and be part of constructing things. Humorous. I think laughter changes so much. And having the ability, of course, to laugh at yourself probably being the primary thing we should be doing. But I think that's what they'd say. Funny, accessible, kind, smart. And that sounds braggy, but I hope I kind of at least am committed enough to lifelong learning to always be on the lookout for new things and being willing to share those things. So I think that's what they would say. And in fact, I sent, for the Friday before Mother's Day, I sent a little note out house-wide where I went out. I said, I'm going to go look the definition of mothering, because we think of mothering as this thing that's this biological process, but we all know it's more than that. All of us have the capacity to mother, and it's not even necessarily gender based. And so, sort of said a little bit about that, thanked the people who every day show kindness and protection and compassion and caring for our patients, and then thank the people who are going to be working over the Mother's Day, giving our patients mothering. And one of the coolest things that happens when you do that, again, getting more back than you put out, was when one employee sent just a one-line response in an email, one sentence, and it says, "You are Craig." And I was like, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, and especially if, it's easy for us to, we're kind of going down that road again of the narcissism or the ego or whatever. It's easy for us to, I'm saying us because I've fallen prey to this too, but of saying, yeah, like I lead this team and we're doing well, and of course we're doing well because of all of us. But again, there's this thing that's, I'm here, like I'm leading this. But what I love about that idea of you are Craig is the brand of what you just described, that kindness, the humor, the accessibility, all of those things, I would imagine spills over quite well to, again, because the people are watching you. People are always watching, whether you have a title or not. But when you have that title, you are in that position, people are watching you even more. Every move you make, right? And so when you go down and you're hugging the patient and you go down and you're talking to people, it just gives everybody the permission and the insight to replicate that, to do what you do. And so then that brand would spill right over into the rest of the workplace and into the customer experience. It's beautiful. Yeah. So now that we see how absolutely wonderful you are, which is why you're on this show, I would like for you to share with those who are listening a time when maybe you were not this most enlightened and refreshing leader, and you weren't real proud of yourself, like not the best version of you. And then what it is that you did to come out of that time and just, reveal the place you're at right now.
Yeah, well, there was a point, and God, first of all, there isn't one time. And you can call them crucible moments, and that's what I call it, as opposed to a crucible moment, something. But so there's lots of them, if I really had to go back and list. And they were all opportunities to grow. And that's, I think, where you're getting at with this question. But the one I thought that might be worthy of sharing was sitting on a former leadership team. This goes back a few years to obviously my Kaiser Permanente days, because that's where I basically grew up. There was a point or there is a point or can become a point in organizations, sort of stories or journeys where they hit hard times in any one of a number of ways. And depending on who the leader is, they either sort of pull all of us in, gather all of us in as executives on a team and say, let's work these problems together because we can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. Two of us can't do it alone. And what they'll often do is the leader will shrink the accountability for managing through a tough time to a couple, three people. And if there's one thing that I cannot stand, it's being excluded. I just don't do being excluded well, never have. Back to being that little kid, I can remember being barely able to read and still under 5 years old. And I had lots of ear infections. It seems like I was always at the hospital. And I remember those big doors that had this big red sign, could barely make it out, but I knew for sure I couldn't go back there. And it bothered me that I couldn't go back. I've been like, don't exclude me. Because what happens when I feel excluded, especially if I think, so forget the example as a 5-year-old or 4-year-old or whatever, but for sure at this age where I think I have something that I can contribute, it bothers me not to be able to do that. And what happens when I get in that space is you'd think I think it's a mixture of two things. I'm pissed at the people who are excluding me, who are my bosses or my peers. And I'm also beating myself up because the message that I'm saying is I'm not good enough. That's why they don't want me in there. You may think you can help, but you can't help. So the sort of the flogging that I do to myself or have done to myself is not helpful. It's not useful. And then what happens is I withdraw. And then when I withdraw, I think there are ways where all those nice things that I said about my leadership style, they just go out the window. And I can become a little whiny among trusted colleagues, not everybody. The interesting thing over career, though, I figured out is when that happens, it's almost always that others are feeling the same way. So you find the whiny, sort of curmudgeon-y hood, and you hang out there. And I can remember years ago being there, and I went, you know what? You are working in your circle of concern, to use the Covey language, instead of your circle of influence. You know this work, so fine. They put you there. Go build it somewhere else. Exercise your, your agency. Use your agency to build the kind of culture and focus on those things that you can influence. You know how this works.
Yes.
I remember sending this email to the team. My direct reports and say, I may have even said, I know I've been grouchy or whatever lately. It's been tough, but guess what? I think it is. And I said, and I'm not focused on the things I can influence and change. I'm focused on the things that at this point anyway I can. So let's have an offsite and let's start to build our own team. And that was the start for the leadership team that I led in these last many years at KP, to us really having one of the most amazing teams. I'd hear from people on the team who would be out and about with people who weren't on our teams, like, we have the cool team. And that's what I always wanted my team to be. In fact, I remember saying, we're going to be the next generation of cool. And a little bit of a swagger about what we do. Focus on the people we're responsible and accountable to, and focus on the work and do the work well. And the rest will out in some way. So, it was a good learning for me and I can get there. There were times even more recently as, the wind down, I didn't know it was the wind down, to leaving Kaiser to come here, where, I could easily go back into that place of feeling not good enough because of a leadership style that excluded and didn't rely on the wisdom of all those around. And so what did I learn from it? How about you not exclude? And how about you rely on the wisdom of your team? And be mindful of the fact that at any given time, there could be somebody out there who is feeling that way, or feeling excluded, or feeling devalued. And you don't want to do that. So.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, you were speaking to me probably, I don't know, there's probably tons of people who listen that also have this kind of not good enough or imposter thing or whatever, right? We all struggle with this so many times. Just recently, I did my first ever TED Talk. And the TED Talk, yeah, that was exciting. And the TED Talk, literally, it talks about, the beginning is about my story, but in the end, it boils down to this feeling of not being good enough. And the whole idea is to let your adversity work for you, use your adversity to your advantage. And what you did inside of this space is you reframed how you thought about it. You step back and say, wait a second, now I actually get to, here's that get to again. Now I actually get to work within my sphere of influence and bring out the best inside that sphere and work in a collaborative way to move them forward. And so this exclusion is actually a positive thing because it made me become a better leader and it helped others lead well and projects, right? So it was a reframing that took place inside of you. And that's what I talk about in the TED Talk because it happened. This stuff happens all the time. And this idea of not being good enough, it pervades, for me, since I was a child, it pervaded my life. And it comes in and out. It just bears its head. It's like, just get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of my way. But I think a lot of people on the call, I bet you a lot of people listening in right now on the show are actually probably going, yeah, that was me. I've been there, done that. But that was beautiful.
And at the same time, I will tell you if there's anything that I've had a couple, some very specific reasons to reflect back on, some of those times and say, and to what extent was my inability, unwillingness, fear, limiting beliefs, that my inability, therefore, because of those things, to push down the door and say, let me in, I can help. And that's a very ego-driven sounding thing, which I don't mean it, but it's really our accountability when we see things going crazy and have a sense that there's a different way to do it. Was there something more that I could have done to have potentially have helped change a trajectory? I'll tell you, when I do the meta-analysis of that, given what is top of mind for me with respect to some past challenges as a leader, I come back to, no, you couldn't. There's only so much you can own. And that's good because it takes the ego out of it. Like, I could have made a difference. Well, maybe. But if there's anything out of all of that I've learned is that it is important to speak truth to power. Whether power chooses to listen is a whole nother deal. But it is important to speak your truth to power. And minimally, and speak it quietly and speak it clearly. And then say they have the option to accept your help, to accept the perspective or not. So that's the other side of that is, go off and do, because that's actually using influence, or at least attempting to use influence to get things done, as opposed to just saying, well, good, I'm going to pick up my marbles and go home and I'll go over and build awesomeness somewhere else. So I do, sort of, I don't know, regret is too strong a word, but I'm certainly thinking about it and then thinking, how do I make sure, again, that I create the kind of spaces that don't have people who can see things, who might have some wonderful ways that they want to think about things, that they have a chance to, sort of voice that.
Wow. You know what? I think that introspection is it's needed by all of us. And I, one of the things I'd say is don't let all of these things bear down on you. Don't let the weight of that crush you. I like the fact that you kind of gave yourself grace and let yourself off the hook a little bit to say, nope, there's actually nothing I could have done. But the other thing is that you're in a beautiful place now. And so every one of those little potholes that you ran into, those were setting you up for this place of beauty now, this place where you're like, I actually am fully myself. I don't have to deal with that. And I'm smart enough because of what I felt through the leadership channels and stuff that I don't want to do that to anyone else. I mean, that level of not only, I think, emotional self-awareness where you're getting what you understand you and your, but it's also like, what could be, you're socially aware. You're like, how could that impact others? I'm putting myself in the other person's shoes to say, boy, am I doing something that's driving them to feel not good enough? And this idea of gathering the wisdom of your people immediately says, I'm important. I matter. Wow. Wow. It's good stuff. It really is. So when you are deep in, meetings and just all kinds of things that are happening. And what do you do besides this, all the thing you already revealed, which is connecting with the staff by going to see them? Do you do any other things that connect you more deeply to the people that are on your team?
Well, first of all, one of the things that can happen when teams are stressed, and thankfully we are not, is what I've watched over the years is communication shuts down most times. Maybe that's a simpler way of all that blather that I just said. People stop talking, they go into rooms, doors are closed. And so that is what there might be the temptation to do, which is almost then the leader thinking, I can figure this out. That's when you need to open the doors more widely. And actually, there's a huge ounce of prevention that comes in that. And the prevention is make sure that you are having regular meetings and that you're working within some structure. I mean, I'm a doc, so in part, I'm used to using or at least thinking in terms of systems and structures and checklists and that kind of thing. So it's important to have structure and to make sure that you're keeping track of all the spinning plates going on. Some of which I put up there and got spinning and have a lot of excitement. And so I keep lists. We have a weekly executive team meeting that lasts an entire afternoon, 3 hours. 3 hours. We have an offsite over here. We've built that since coming here, and that was actually, I said, we have some deep issues we need to talk about. And someone on the team said, we need to go off and have these conversations, which was a new thing for them. And we've created and have one of those monthly at somebody's house, and we spend the whole day. I make the agenda. We know what deep topics we want to do and what deep dives. So I think there is a real need to be structurally, to be organized, which I never thought of myself as organized, but I think I'm learning that, maybe I'm organized, and I helps that people who keep you organized. So I think that's certainly part of it, because that's where the work happens. So it's not just running around. I mean, this place is as special as it is, not only because we're a people first sort of culture, but we got stuff we have to get done. So making sure that we're following through, following up, keeping our commitments, asking lots of questions, and then working through those questions is, I think, the other part of it to get to solutions. So that's a different kind of connection. And then giving people, in particular the managers, the directors, and the executives, giving them opportunities to stretch and grow by giving them, not assignments, it sounds like I'm a general or something, but knowing the people well enough to know what you could hand to whom. I mean, you don't say, let me know how that all comes out, but with where I kind of give people some chances. And by the way, the third, fourth, or whatever thing, I don't know where I am in my listening room, is take some risks. Free up your environment enough that we can try some things and keep what works. So those are the ways, I think. So there is work to get done. And the way that, and then to exercise all those sorts of things that I talked about when you asked me about leadership style in service to getting that work done. So,
You may have actually answered that last question I was going to ask, which is, for a leader who might be at a crossroads or just at an interesting place in their journey, what maybe pearl of wisdom might you leave them on the call? And some of these things that you talked about, I think, were that. But is there anything you'd like to add to that as a pearl of wisdom? Maybe that one thing that you think makes all the difference in leadership.
Yeah, I do. And I'm gonna sound like the old lady that I am. I don't have any qualms telling people I'm 61. So I know, and I pray, and I plan to have this be the way that I go out in 10 plus years, because I would love to work much longer than I am in this wonderful place. But when we're younger, we always worry about what's the next thing. And so people will, they'll listen to podcasts like this. We'll read everything we can. We'll want to network, and we'll want to do these things because we have this sense that this is where I want to go. And my belief is, if you had said to me, even 5 years ago, guess where you'll be 5 years from now? I said, that makes absolutely no sense. None. And yet, looking back on it, it makes all the sense in the world. And the reason it makes all the sense in the world is that many, many, many years ago, I stopped worrying about being queen. And I remember writing that sentence down. Don't worry about being queen. Where you're sort of getting caught up in, am I ever going to lead anything? Am I ever going to have the chance? And And it wasn't about title or about money for me. It was about the opportunity to sort of really make a big difference and be able to really direct and guide and all that stuff. If you are so focused on where you want to get to, you are missing the opportunity to soak in the experiences. It is that whole notion of presence, being wholly present in whatever you're doing. You'll miss the opportunities to learn and grow from all of the resources and richness and experiences that life throws your way that are sitting all around you. So don't worry about being king or queen. It'll happen. And mostly it happens not because of anything you super intentionally do. It's because of something you said earlier, Heather, and that is that there's always people watching you. I haven't had to work as hard as you would think to get the roles and the opportunities I've had along this thing called the journey to date, because I just showed up and just spoke up and was part of making things better. I've always been happy to be a leaf in a stream and let the forces of the water pull me on. And then somebody comes, plucks you out of that stream and sticks you in. Don't worry about that. That's what I'd say.
Wow, that's just... I think I want to sit on that. I need to let that just take me along, right? This is a great way to, so I think for me at least, to go over on my weekend. And I think for those who are listening, they'll hear the show and just say, wow, there'll be lots of wow moments. I really appreciate your time on the show. And I think you've given us a lot to ponder. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. It's always just being able to be in conversation this way just reinforces for me. It's as much reminding and reminders for me as it is for whatever wisdom I might be able to share. It's just the self-mentoring and self-coaching opportunities that these conversations allow, and the co-mentoring and co-coaching. So glad to be here.
It's very true. It is so true. I learn so much every time from every conversation. So, if anybody who's listening right now, if you have found value in this conversation, which I really hope you have, please do make sure that you share it out there. And also don't forget to rate and review it wherever you're listening. When you rate and review it, let's say on iTunes or wherever, it actually, the algorithm will bring this to the top of the Leadership Podcast. And I think this is the kind of stuff that people need to be hearing. And it gives just really great guidance from real leaders doing this real work in the trenches. So thank you so much for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.